because they can't be in more than mid to late 20s, right?
Yeah, right.
So another 10 years, if you think they're still going, I mean, good Lord, Madonna's still putting out music, and she's 63. She got a long way to go before she's done. WAP.
Yeah, there you go, WAP. Anyway, so how do you feel about Aaron Judge this morning? Yesterday, we were talking about how it was ridiculous to pull him out of the game. I didn't have as much of a problem.
Now we know why they pulled him out of the game.
And now we know. Lower body tightness. Now, what do you believe? Because the whole I wanted to prevent an injury thing, that is interesting to me. Because this is what Aaron Boone said. He said, I wanted to prevent an injury. Now, I've never really heard a manager say that. We know that in blowouts they'll pull out stars and all sorts of sports, and that's what it's like, why keep this guy in? There's no point. And I understand that, and that's sort of, it's an unsaid thing, I wanted to prevent an injury. But when you see a manager, actually hear a manager say that, is that really a mentality change now with the New York Yankees because all the injuries that they had, that like the second any guy feels any sort of discomfort, that boom, you're out and let's try to figure this out because we need to prevent an injury because we need to react differently than we did last year because it was a disaster with injuries? Or are they trying to quiet down what could be another death blow to them because Aaron Judge really is not feeling right, and this is one of those things where it gets pulled out of a game, misses a game, and then all of a sudden he's gone for 2 months.
It's very possible. I don't know, 2 months. But if you told me he doesn't play till next week or sometime late next week, I wouldn't be surprised. And here's the quote that I read from Boone today in the New York Post. He was asked, so he says lower body tightness. And that's why he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Well, asked what that means exactly. Here's the quote from Boone. All over the lower body where he is dealing with some rigors, the hips and down into the hamstrings and calves. I mean, come on. We can't be more specific than that. And if that's the case, then they've got a bigger problem than they're even letting on to. Because if he's hurting from the calves to the hips to the hamstring, good Lord. I mean, because if you tell me hips down to the hamstring, that's everything.
Right. I don't even know how a man, just like Giancarlo Stanton, I don't understand how a man that young and that in shape could play this few a games. Like, actually, the Giancarlo Stanton injury makes more sense to me than this because you pull a muscle. People pull muscles all the time. It happens. It happens to people who are in shape, out of shape. The nature of baseball, when you run and you stop and you run again, it could happen. Giancarlo Stanton is prone to that. For Aaron Judge to play, X amount of games here and then have his entire lower body be tight from his hips to his calves to everything else. And plus, he's been playing his ass off. He's been great.
Yeah, leads the majors in home runs.
Right. It's not like he's been hampered at all by these injuries. It's just, it's really confusing. And I hope it's precautionary. But the problem is now, because of what has happened with the Yankees last year and now this year with Stanton, all the injuries that they dealt with over the last calendar year plus, is that any time that you hear this stuff, that no matter what the manager says, it's going to be blown out of proportion when it comes to Stanton and Judge. There's nothing he could say. I mean, look at yesterday. We had a whole conversation when he said, it was just precautionary. We pulled him out of the game. We had some leverage in the game, and he was on the turf, and I just wanted to make sure, okay, well, that was a big deal because he came out of a game that seemingly he would have stayed in under normal circumstances. And then the next day he comes back, and he's not in the lineup, and he's giving us this. It's like, Jesus, what is going on?
Right, which is it?
What is it? What are we doing? So it's really a lose-lose for Aaron Boone because no matter what he says in regards to Judge and Stanton, people are going to freak, especially Aaron Judge with the way he's playing.
You're just not going to believe him anymore because, I mean, this is proof positive right here that taking him out of that game was not the reason that they gave. Just saying, well, we got a lot of games coming up, and if I could give him a couple innings off his feet, no, not when he can't play the next day. That tells me that he probably went in, told the manager, something's not feeling quite right. All right, get him out. I understand that. And if they would have just said that, it would have made more sense than what they did. That having been said, when you say the entire part of your lower body is tight, let me ask you this. And this goes back to the conversation we had yesterday. If it was 50 years ago, does the player even say anything or does he just battle through? And then to that point, when you talk about just tightness in a different part of your body, that's not a pull. That just, I don't know, is he working a different muscle or muscle groups that he otherwise didn't? Like when you got on the Peloton for the first time,
Sure.
I would think the next day or the day after, or maybe 2 days after, your legs were a little bit sore.
Yeah, naturally.
And probably tight.
Right.
Did you just shut it down, or did you get back on the bike and work it out?
No, I went back and I did it again, of course, and I was doing it every day, but I'm not doing it at all now.
But let's say
yes.
you were making $50 million a year riding that bike, and you had a bike coach. Would he shut you down for a few days? It's the same type of deal.
Right. I do. That popped into my mind yesterday, that conversation we had about, would this have happened all these years ago? And my first instinct was absolutely not. It wouldn't have happened, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Lower body tightness. So is this one of those things that, just because Aaron Judge has been injury prone, they're going to be even more extra careful with him? Or are they hiding an injury? That's the thing we're going to find out in the next couple of days. But it did provide that opportunity for Clint Frazier. And I got to give him a ton of credit because, think about this. This is a guy who's been back and forth and should have been starting if it was any other team in the major leagues, he would have been starting. He acted a little bit like a baby during these times. We know that. Remember, he didn't report to minor league camp right away, that when he got sent down and he had like X amount of time to be there, and that was a whole thing. But to run your mouth, say you belong, be a guy who has had a chip on your shoulder, and then your first real opportunity this year to do what he did last night, I thought was very, very impressive. And he's just one of those guys that, when he makes contact, he looks like he belongs in the major leagues. He's got that bat speed that reminds me of, even though it's different because he's always got two hands on the bat and not really letting go like Alfonso Soriano did, but the way the ball jumps off his bat is just different. So good for him, because he was a young guy who was dealing with a lot of stuff. He got crushed by a lot of Yankee fans. Even in the beginning, that whole Susan Waldman thing when he asked for number 7 or whatever it was, and people were killing him for that. He's really weathered the storm here. This is one game, I understand, but, that's not an easy spot to come up when you're the guy who said, I belong, I belong, I belong. Okay, here you go. Here's another opportunity, and at least early returns. He looked absolutely great. I hope he sticks. I hope there's a space for him on this team. I know it's difficult, but, in all those, phantom Met-Yankee trade fakakta calls that we would get all the time from people, the only guy I ever said that I was like, the guy that I would take right away 100%, even with his defensive liability that's there, is Clint Frazier. I think this guy could be a star if he could play every single day.
Really backed up his words last night. And the home run, to your point about the bat speed and the ball jumping off his bat, that thing was just a seed that he hits to left field, hits the home run, and then the double. He was a triple shy of the cycle. That's a hell of a night. And not to get off Frazier, but based with him and LeMahieu, what they did.
Yeah.
The two of them, it just looks like every time they come up, and I say every time because we've seen Frazier before, and he's been really good in spurts. It's just a matter of seeing him more on a consistent basis. We've now seen LeMahieu for a long time here. The guy is one of the best hitters I have ever seen on a day-to-day basis. He is that good. And, he 4 more hits last night. He can put the ball, it seems like, wherever he wants. You want to put it outside corner? Fine, I'll take it to right field. You want to drive to pound me in? I'll take it to the left. He's a pleasure to watch. He really is. And the Yankees, they got a good deal when they signed him. And he is, Boomer always talks about outperforming your contract. This guy's outperforming his contract on a daily basis. So while the Yankees might be banged up because Stanton's out, and while the Yankees might be banged up because of what's going on with Aaron Judge, who knows what that'll lead to or won't lead to. Depth. They've got it. They've got it. They dealt with it last year. They got through it last year, and this team in a shortened season will get through it again this year. They just will.